In this video demonstration, we're going to be talking about formZ7. formZ7 represents the latest upgrade to our flagship product formZ, which has been around for more than 20 years. formZ has been completely recreated from the ground up with ease of use in mind. Now anyone can jump in and create their own 3D models with formZ. On our screen now is the Valencia Opera House by world-renowned architect Santiago Calatrava. And we can see right away that we're not dealing with our standard rectilinear architecture with its 90-degree corners and its box-like designs. This is a unique harmony of smooth and flowing shapes. So we thought this would be a great building to use to show you the power of formZ7's NURBS tools. What do I cover in the demonstration? Well, we build the Opera House itself up to a level, in the spirit of a massing model, if you will, to a level where it can be sent out to be 3D printed. There are three main things we want you to take away from the demonstration. One is that formZ is now incredibly easy to use with its intelligent guides and auto snapping and auto selection, that it is so easy to get into the modeling and start designing right away. The second thing is that NURBS have also been re-implemented so that they are incredibly easy to use. So if you've had trouble with NURBS in the past, now is the time where you can put them back or add them to your design arsenal. And the third thing is that none of these improvements that make formZ easier to use sacrifice the robust nature of the models. They're still solid models, which means they can be used throughout a design process, even by other departments, by other companies, because you can export your models in different formats. If you would like to do your construction documentation within formZ, that's great. If you would like to export it to another package that you do that with, you can do that as well. You can also have your models CNC milled by sending them out as step files, and you can also have your models 3D printed by exporting them as STL or ZPR files. Now this is a quick rendering of the model that I did that I sent off to our friends at Z Corporation who make the 3D printer. And they FedEx Expressed me back this model. So it's about 12 inches long by about 7 inches deep. So this is pretty good size. It's a gypsum-based model, so it's fairly heavy. It's made its way across the country a few times to shows, and it's still here in one piece. So it's something that you can send around the design table for people to look at your design, and you can also keep it on your shelf for years to come. Well, let's go ahead and jump in right away here into formZ and take a look at the modeling. The first thing I want to do is give you a quick tour of the interface. Here on the left are your modeling tools. Now, I have my formZ set up so that when I click on my first tool in my modeling row then pops out and I can choose from my suite of tools. It's also possible, and it's the default, that just simply hovering over one of these will cause that to pop out, but I like to do it this way, and that's one of the great things about formZ7 is it has a very high level of an ability to customize it, and we'll get right into that. Here on the right is what we call the palette dock, and it contains the most important palettes that you're going to be using as you work in formZ. Up here are the workspaces. There's one for Bonsai. If you're coming from Bonsai, you can choose to work with a set of tools that mimics what you get there. There's a standard modeling workspace for formZ7. There's a drafting workspace and also a rendering animation workspace, and finally a workspace for your layout, laying out your pages. All right. Let us look at also the heads-up display. formZ7 has the ability to has this customizable heads-up display. When you hit your space bar, you will get this list of this customizable set of tools. This row here maintains the last 4 tools that you've used, so you can see what you've done, and if you just want to go back a tool or something, you can do that. How do we customize that? Well, let's look at the tool manager here real quickly, and we can choose a category of tool here on our left-hand side and decide whether we want to add a tool to our repertoire down here, so to speak. Here's the mirror tool. That's one I like to use a lot. I'll put that down there. I've already got the move tool, so a couple of these tools are already here. Let's go ahead and get the scale tools down here. This is just an example, just to show you what it can do. You can actually change the color of the heads-up display background, whether or not it is transparent. Let's make it a little bit transparent, just to show you how it works. Like so. Probably really don't want transparency, but you can control all of that, and so now I can simply get any of my tools I would like from this area. Okay, so let's now turn to our modeling. I'll go ahead and get my pick tool. Now what we have on our screen here is the 3D sliver base that I created for the 3D model. I have this out so we can get a sense of scale and direction in our file and proceed with some idea what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this layer and just start with this 3D massing base that I have here. And I'm going to switch to a front view and start like anything else when I model. I basically start off with shapes, which are arcs, splines, vector lines, what have you. What I want to do first is essentially create a football shape over the top of my massing base. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do first is create an arc. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my snap set here. Oops, I got a reverse arc. I'm going to show you one thing that's important to know about formZ is there are a couple of keys that are important. One is the control or command key. That will be a control key on Windows or command on Macintosh. That'll actually flip the direction of an arc as you draw it, so you can change that in midstream, and you don't have to stop and start over if you don't want to. Now to make my football, I'm going to take my source lines that I've created and simply revolve the arc around the line. Now whenever I create something in formZ, I get this orange highlight on my item. It is what we call the result buffer, and I also have these handy arrows that I can use to make a change to my object if I would like. So let's go ahead and open these ends up here. I want to start cutting away from this thing, so I want those to be open. Now I want to show you one of the coolest tools for me is the slice tool, and I'm going to turn off heal in this case, and I'm going to pull up some reference lines here, and I want to show you how we can cut objects. Now the slice tool looks like a meat cleaver, and this grid you see here we call the reference plane. We're always going to have that on our screen. It has to do with orienting ourselves in space. In this case, with this tool, we need to think of this as our cutting board, and if we think of that as our cutting board and our line here as our cutter, then we'll always know what direction where our cut is going to be coming from. So I'm going to go ahead and cut away from this here and modify the orientation of my reference plane and attack this thing some more, cut some more out of it. Just delete here what I don't want. Switching to the delete tool. I could also get it from here. Let's get the slice tool back. I'm going to go ahead and slice that there. Let's flip the reference plane again and click the slice tool. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete a few lines like so. Now I want to create NURBS surfaces because I remember I said I wanted to show you NURBS. So let's go ahead and create some NURBS surfaces from scratch. In order to do that, let's borrow the edges that we already have. Well, basically we'd be deriving these edges. And we'll get the NURBS Loft tool. Now if you click on any two source lines, it will immediately form a NURBS surface. If you want to include more lines to describe your surface, all you need to do is hold down the Shift key, and I will do that now and show you how to create a surface that has more than two sources. Okay, now these are NURBS surfaces, and they have a set of controls on them. And what that means is we can take these controls and change them, drag them around, and make changes to our surface. Now in this case, we have so many controls over our surface that when we drag one, we just get this little local edit, which is no good. And we really can't do anything design-wise with this. And this might be one of the reasons a lot of people do shy away from NURBS when they get involved in it. But what you can do with formZ is looking over here in the tool options, and this will become apparent how important the tool options palette over here is as we move forward, because here we can change numeric values based on what, depends on whatever tool you have, but you can change the numeric value for that tool over here. Now once we've done that, we now have a NURBS surface here that we can control in a far more intelligent fashion, so we can really start making some design decisions here. Now essentially I am moving points around willy-nilly. There is a way though to control these points very, very accurately. So remember I said that we're not sacrificing any accuracy here as we do this. So let's just switch to a front view and see what we have. Okay, we've got a couple of points here, and they're certainly not at the same elevation. So I'm going to select one with this tool active and look over here, and I'm given a X, Y, and Z location in space for that point, and also an index so I can change, jump from one point to another. So I'm able to come in here and type in the elevation that I want, and then the model will update itself. So I can then move over to the next point and change its value to the same value. Just round them both out to 200, and then we have our exact object. All right, so let's move along. I want to show you some more stuff about navigation. One thing that I'm doing here is using the command key on my Macintosh. This would be the control key on Windows to toggle between the directions that I'm moving. So if I start moving in one direction and it's not the direction I want, all I have to do is toggle that, and then I can stay on these guides. Now if you want to be away from the guide, that's easy enough to do, and if you want to stay on the guide, you just need to stay near it. If you'd like to stay locked to the guide, you can hold down the shift key, and no matter what you do, it'll stay on there. So this really allows me to stay in a 3D perspective mode as I work, sort of rather than having to go to this older and more old school 3-view method where we have your top, your front and your side view and your 3D perspective up here. I can really just stay more in 3D and work more like I would be working with objects in real life. So let's go ahead and make a copy of this. Now I want to make a new NURBS surface which flows between these two that I've already created. So I'm going to go ahead and get out the NURBS blend tool, and I'm going to click these two edges. Now you'll see that formZ automatically forms me a beautiful intermediate surface, and it also gives me my orange result buffer and my green arrows. Now I'm turning an option on here called Synchronized Arrows, and that allows me to keep my two side arrows equal to each other, and so anything I do here will be symmetrical. I don't have to do that. I could make this any crazy way that I wanted to. I'm affecting here the magnitude of how this tangency is calculated between these surfaces. So I can really just play around with this to my heart's content until I'm really happy with what I have. Now the next thing I want to show you are the NURBS controls. Whenever you have a NURBS surface, you can hit F6 and call up the NURBS controls. Now right now I've actually got 3 separate surfaces, so when I drag here, I'm only manipulating one of the surfaces, which really limits what I'm going to be able to do because I don't want to be adjusting all this stuff over and over. So we want this to be a lot easier somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and get out the NURBS Merge tool and merge these together so that I have one surface, like so. Now when I click on the surface, you'll see that I have one set of controls, and if I grab one part of those controls and drag it, the entire surface now will change, so I can, of course, design in a much more intelligent way. All right. So that is a quick primer on NURBS. There are some other ways that you can manipulate and change objects in formZ. Let's take a quick look. I'm going to go ahead and move this up. Whenever you are moving an object, you can toggle the copy modifier using the Option key. Let's take a quick look at the Morph tool. There's a couple Reshape tools I want to look at in here. This is a neat tool for exploring things you might not normally find, you can actually create sort of an animation between the two surfaces that you have to come up with an intermediate surface. So that's one thing you can do to play around. You can also undo anything in formZ. Here is the radial bend tool. Now I've used my shift key to select more than one of my entities so I can maintain the relationship between them. Now you'll notice that I can change the angle. I have all these neat controls on here that I can modify, and in real time I can see what's happening, so I can get some idea what is going on and whether there's something in here that I really like and would like to keep. If so, all I have to do is stop, and basically move on to the next tool. For example, maybe I want to do a reshape, or rather a reconstruct, and you can see that I get the same set of controls back, so I can continue to manipulate it the ways we were doing before. All right, so we're getting a little crazy here, getting away from what we have there and at the Opera House. I'm going to jump back to where we were, and from this point I'll proceed basically with the idea we're going to build the Opera House and you look at as many tools as we can as we go. This now is this plume petal that we created. We're not going to make an intermediate surface in between in this case. I'm going to go ahead and stitch these together so that we have one object. The next thing I want to do is create a thickness for my object. So it's not really a 3D object in the sense that it has a thickness. So this really will not 3D print. Let's just go with 2 feet. And once I've clicked, formZ goes and builds all of the remaining surfaces that need to be built in order to make my model solid. So if I have my object selected and I look under the tool options under the pick tool, I can check and see if my object is solid. This is important if you're going to do a 3D print, because if this says solid, then you're in good shape. Your object will print just fine. Now let's turn our attention now to the side area here. I'm going to make some new geometry that I'm going to use to subtract from the side piece. Now whenever you create something, you get a magenta guide here that can keep you on a 45-degree angle, which is really great for being able to move very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and do some numeric entry here. Let's do a rotate. I'm going to take this thing and rotate it. Let's rotate it 45 degrees. I just can numerically enter that if I want, or I can, of course, do that directly on the screen. Now I'm going to use the Reshape tool here to go what I call 3D. The Reshape tool is really cool. Let me show you here. Any flat or what we call planar surface is game for the Reshape tool. So you can just click and pull on it. You can also push your surface directly through your object, because this is a real-time Boolean, so it won't stop you if you hit an edge or something like that. If you want to push a hole all the way through, turn a face into a hole, essentially, you can certainly do that. So I use it too for going 3D. Now let's move this new block up into position. See that I'm using my guides to stay in a 3D environment. Now we talked about the slice tool already. I want to talk now about the surface split tool, because with the slice tool you're slicing with wires. With the surface tool you're actually using, you can use objects to split surfaces. So let me go ahead and put some more blocks up here, and we're going to go ahead and cut those out very quickly. Since you've seen what that's all about, there's no need for me to dwell on it. And now that I've gotten that cut away, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so we can look at this thicken again. I'm going to go ahead and thicken this, and aesthetically maybe I want to play around with the thickness here. Maybe it's a little thin for the side since it's so much larger than the plume, so I can go ahead and make that change and step back and take a look at what we have and see if it's what we want. I think it is, so let's move on. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and create a main deck for our structure. And I've gone ahead and started out a rhombus. Now I just drew that with the polyline tool and clicked 4 points. Now I want to talk a little bit about this control key, and we'll do it with this tool. When you're using a tool, if you hit the control key and you're over a point, it'll just operate on that point if possible. Or if you do an edge, it'll do the two ends, the two anything it can round that's associated with that particular segment. Or you can click directly on an object and get everything rounded that it can round. So let's change this to, maybe we want it to be 24 feet. And I'm going to go ahead and make this 3D. Then we'll go ahead and move it up into position. I want to keep my center line here, just like so. And then I want to go ahead and make this thing larger. Actually, I want this object. Now, whenever I do a scale, it'll give me this center point that I can use to make sure that I'm scaling from the center. Now, I just need to visually look at this. And now we're ready to do some rounding. So let me turn off my reference plane here. Now formZ has a really cool, kind of a more advanced controlled rounding tool that you can use, which will allow you to create rounding sets, which is very good for making revisions to a design later on during the design cycle. For example, you could have different sets of rounds and just come back in and change the value of one later on. In this case, we're going to go ahead and use this more simple rounding tool and just click on the bottom. And there we get a bevel. This thing's set to bevel. We could set it to circular and take a look at what a 3-foot radius looks like. We could see what a 24-inch radius looks like. I think I like the bevel the best, so let's go ahead and stick with that. Now, in the actual Opera House, between the massing base that we started with and the main deck that we just made, there's an elaborate mullion system, and it's an oval mullion system, and of course laying that all out is a little beyond the scope of the video that we have. So I want to show you some more NURBS stuff and how we might be able to convey the idea that we have using the NURBS tools. So in order to start a NURBS, again, I'm going to start with some basic drawing tools and simply create an arc. And then I'm going to take the arc and modify its structure just a little bit. So when I pull on this, I'll simply get a change that I want. That's a little bit more advanced, so you'll be learning that a little later on. But for the rest here, it's very simple. Now I want to take this and move it upward to the bottom of my deck. Now with the auto snapping on, all I have to do is be around the edge of my deck. Now one thing I want you to notice, especially older, the formZ users that have used the older versions of formZ, that I'm really not going and turning my snaps on and off all the time. I'm not turning ortho on and off all the time. And these things are kind of happening automatically. I'm also not selecting topological levels all the time. And so I'm able to move at an incredibly much faster and accelerated rate. So all I have to do is click, and there we live in the place we want to be. And I want to next derive some segments from my object that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift because I'd like to get 2 of them. Now I've got these 2 objects selected, and I want to make a copy and pull that up to the same level as the bottom of our deck. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of quick NURBS surfaces by choosing just 2 wires, one after another. And that way, remember, formZ knows that it wants that we just want to get one surface here. Now, these things don't look too much like mullions, so what I want to do is figure out a way to make them look more like mullions. So I've created ahead of time this materials that looks like, it's just an alternating black and white pattern. I'm going to take that and pull it and drag it over to my objects. Now you'll notice when I do that, it maps those parametrically onto those objects just in the way that I would like. So I'm not stopping now to spend time to figure out how to get my map to fit onto my surfaces. I'm just moving on to the next step, which in this case is going to be creating mirrored copies of these bottom sections, like so. So we're actually finishing off that thought. Now I want to go ahead and bring back the massing base that we had before. It's ghosted on another layer, but I've got another one stashed to bring back more easily. Now I want to talk a little bit more about some of the tools in the Reshape row. One is this offset segment tool, and the other is the offset outline tool. I'm going to take a brief step away from this model just to take a quick look at the offset segment tool. What it does is allows you to click, drag, and offset segments on a object. So all you need to do is click and drag and bring them over to where you want them to be. And then, for example, let's use the Reshape tool to see what we have. We have all new faces that we can work with and design with. So we want to push that all the way through our object. So this really opens up a lot of possibilities for modeling in a much more speedy way. So let's go ahead and get rid of that and go back to our model, and I'll show you the offset outline tool, which is essentially the same thing, but it works with outlines. So I can take my outline that I've drawn already and worked so hard to draw and leverage that and create a totally new outline that is based on the original. So I'm not sitting here trying to match what I had already created. So I'm going to go 3D on this thing. Maybe I want to go a little bit higher. Let's do that. Let's look at the Bulge tool for a second here. We'll click on this, and then we'll grab our controller and move it. When we do this, of course, again, we see our magenta guide that shows up to help us with our 45-degree angle. And now we know we have a symmetrical edit all the way around, so I'm simply going to click and let formZ know that's what I want. And it goes ahead and finishes my part for me. Now the next thing I want to do is create another deck that fits up here on top of this one. So obviously it needs to be smaller than this one. So I think I'm going to need to copy and scale and move this thing up. But I'm going to show you a neat way that you can do those all in one shot. First I'm going to draw a guide as a reference. And then I am going to get my scale tool out. And I'm going to click on my deck here. Now remember, we could click here in the middle and scale from the center of our deck. In this case we want to scale from somewhere way up in the sky, and then we can pull our green arrow to control our move scale. So we can just simply eyeball this and drop this right in where we want it to be. And now that we're done with our guide, we'll go ahead and delete it. I've got some more pieces here that I've already made to speed our creation process here. Can actually unlock this and maybe modify this a little bit if we want to, in order to make it fit with what we have already created. Now those pieces were easy to make. By now you're experts and can make all those pieces. Another next step, obviously, I guess, is to make a mirrored copy of this side piece. We're done with the Reshape tools there. Let's get them out of here. Alright, so there we've got our opposite side. Now I want to go ahead and create the Plume Base. So I'm going to go ahead and take these two objects and just cut these out of the file and show you something else. I'm going to create a new file and paste these objects into it, and then I'm going to find those objects. Then I'm going to create a NURBS loft very quickly. Now we can see that these ends are open. There's a couple of different ways that these could be closed off, but I want to show you one of my favorite tools in formZ, which is the cap tool. And the cap tool will allow you to create caps for holes, essentially, and it gives you some different options that you can use for doing that. For example, you have this bulge capability for creating bulges, or making it bulge more or less, I guess. In this case, we just like a minimal surface, so I'm going to click minimal surface, and then it makes the flattest surface that it can, or the most area effective one. While staying right here on the tool, I'm just going to go ahead and select the bottom set, and then I get that as well. So then I'm going to select all and finally just stitch all these pieces together, and then come over here and verify that we've got a solid object. And here we do. We see under topology type we have a solid. So I'll go ahead and cut that back out of the file, delete that file, and paste back into my model. And finally, we'll turn our 3D print base friend back on, fit the file, and turn on a 3D three-point perspective and fit again. I guess I don't need my center line anymore, so I'll go ahead and get rid of that. So there we have it. We've got our basic model that we wanted to have when we started out, and we're basically ready to go to the 3D printer. I spent a little more time on the mullion system for that particular thing that we needed to do with it in this project. We'll send it out and get it printed. Let's look at a couple other ways that you could display a model. I'm going to go ahead and close this one. And let's take a quick look at the walkthrough tool. This is a tool that will allow you to turn your file into something like a video game, I guess, where you can actually work or move through the model as though you are an individual that's in the space. Now, you can set it to see collisions or avoid you can have collisions or you can avoid collisions. You can go fast or slow. You can go, however you want through your model. So you can sort of see these relationships that you're designing. Let's go ahead and close this one and take a quick look at rendering. Here's a quick render zone render that I've set up of my model. Now this is going to take about 30 seconds to render, so what we're hoping for here is a more realistic presentation image that we can send out to folks and have them look at that. If we want to have it printed or just email off the image. So you can see that we get a really nice rendering of our model simply using Render Zone. Now Render Zone is a package that's available from us here at Autodesk that can plug into formZ. Here is a Render Zone rendering of the interior alongside of the one we just did of the exterior. And that's it for our formZ 7 demonstration video today. formZ is free for students and educators. Go to www.formz.com and click on Academic and then on Student Licenses. This concludes our formZ 7 video demonstration.